Hey, y'all, what's up? We are at day 3, session 2. We are winding down, yes, on the Grad School Success Summit. I hope that you have enjoyed every session so far because this one is certainly going to be amazing. Like Lee and I were talking, and I was like, oh, this is about to be such a good session. I am so excited about it. And sometimes we save the best, the really good for last. So I hope that you are here and excited. And I want to say, if this is your first session you're attending, welcome. If you have been at every session, welcome back, or somewhere in between, welcome back. We're happy to see you here for today's session. With that said, as we usually do, I want to first thank our presenting sponsor, The Professor Is In, for their support of this year's summit, and to our sponsors, Bumble and Non-Tradish, for helping us see this through this year. And of course, every time I'm going to thank the summit planning team. These 7 women have been rocking with me every night, right? In addition to the weeks up to planning this summit. And I'm so grateful for their support and their belief and investment in the vision. And so, ladies, I want to say thank you so much for being a part of this year's planning team. If you are loving the summit, which I absolutely hope that you are, please tag Black in Grad School, tag Lee as she begins to drop the gems that are happening on Twitter and Instagram, and use the hashtag GSSS for Grad School Success Summit 2021. And we will be sharing your posts, we'll be retweeting you, all the good things. And so we're just so happy to have you here. Hope that you are gaining all of the tools to be encouraged and empowered and feeling prepared for the next semester, the next academic year. With that said, I'm going to switch over to introduce our speaker today, Lee. We're going to have a great conversation about navigating the fear of failure. And I want to tell you a little bit about her. Lee is a licensed therapist, certified in Daring Way facilitator, PhD student, and entrepreneur. She primarily works with young adults, helping them prioritize self-love, self-care, and self-acceptance. As a former public school educator, she became passionate about helping young adults navigate the increasing pressures and pain of coming of age in today's society. And her therapeutic interests include childhood, intergenerational, and collective trauma, somatic awareness, and grief and loss. A self-proclaimed recovering perfectionist, her work places heavy emphasis on compassion, courage, and connection. Lee also hosts creative therapeutic workshops with the aim of creating accessible and safe spaces for collective healing. And she resides in the Dallas-Fort Worth metroplex with her husband and children, where she's always up for spicy food and enjoys a good beat drop, a woman after my own heart. With that said, Lee, thank you so much for taking the time to share your experience and your expertise with us today. We are looking forward to hearing everything you have to share because failure is inevitable in graduate school. And we absolutely need to know how we can navigate and tools we can use to get through it because it's going to happen. With that, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Alonce, for that warm welcome. Good evening, scholars. I am so excited to be with you guys tonight to talk about navigating the fear of failure in grad school. Failure needs a new publicist. All right. I say that all the time. And I am showing up for the assignment, and I want you to get ready for this assignment as well. So our agenda for tonight, we've got a few things to cover. I'm going to share a little bit of my story and how failure has shown up for me on my journey. And then we're going to talk a little bit about just why story is important, right? And get clear on maybe the story you're telling yourself about failure. We're going to dig deep to better understand fear, the emotion, and really what the message is there. We're going to do a little work around reframing failure, which is going to lead us right into shifting mindset, because a lot of this is simply mindset work. And I think that mindset is a very trendy term, but no one really gives you the steps on what it looks like. So we'll follow up that with some steps for implementation, ways to just really have support as you are journeying through grad school, and end with your questions and answers. Today's agenda is there for you, and we'll keep it moving. All right. So again, I am Lee. I am a licensed therapist and I'm licensed in the state of Texas. I serve young adult women, so college age to early professional career, who are very much in a space of getting clear on their true identity, right? I help people unpack and unlearn the stories of who they're supposed to be, what they're supposed to want, what they're supposed to do. We unpack that and I help people get clear on honoring who they are, showing up for who they are, learning to trust themselves. And I am also a PhD student, second year at Texas Christian University, which is located in Fort Worth, Texas, where I am studying curriculum studies in education because before I was a therapist, I was a public school educator. So, a little bit of my story. Fear of failure started for me really early because as a child, I was always praised. Things came to me easily and I was good at a lot of things. And so that kind of began subconsciously this trajectory for me to only show up in ways where I knew I was going to be great. And that worked for a long time, right? When you're young and things come easy, it all kind of flows. And so I was thriving off of people's perception of me, and I was thriving off of the praise that I received, right? And so that kind of, again, narrowed me into this mindset of needing more or wanting more of that because that feels good, right? We're human. We like to be praised, we like to be validated. But unbeknownst to me, until later in life, I realized that if I was ever coming across something that I might not be good at, then I avoided it, right? I was not a risk taker. I stayed in this lane of what I'm good at. The problem with that, though, is that as we get older, things get harder. School gets harder. Relationships get harder. Everything becomes more difficult. And so I was really shrinking myself and limiting myself by avoiding what could be failure. And so when I really had the opportunity to do some work around this, to unpack this and really get to why do I avoid risk? Why am I such a rule follower? Why am I such a perfectionist? Why am I such a people pleaser? Right. And when I'm asking myself these questions, I realize that underneath all of that, I had this core belief that failure meant I'm not good, right? Failure meant I wouldn't get the praise, that people would have a negative perception of me. And I noticed that so many people, though their story may be different, the core belief comes back to we relate failure as something negative. We relate failure has a negative connotation, and we learn that as early as elementary. So that's my story. I want you to take some time and really consider what's the story you're telling yourself about failure. Because when we fear it, it keeps us stuck, honestly. It keeps us in this place again where we are avoiding it, right? And it's not so much that we are avoiding failure as it is we are avoiding the feelings that we anticipate that may come with failing, right? We don't want to feel shame, we don't want to feel embarrassment, we don't want to disappoint our loved ones, we don't want to feel guilt. So at the truth of it, we're avoiding what we assume will come with failure. But I really want you to spend some time now and in the coming days because this work isn't always light bulb moment, right? We romanticize healing, but the truth of it is that healing is messy and complicated, and it's not linear, right? You have some lags, you have some backward experience, some experience that feel like they're taking you back. So stay with this and really get clear on what is the story I'm telling myself about failure and what are my core beliefs there. And as you begin to unravel that, then I'll give you some more steps to really help you move through it, right? Not past it, not around it, but through it. So let's start with fear, because in my work as a therapist, we spend a lot of time on emotions. The truth is, a lot of us are not very emotionally aware. We're not very comfortable with our emotions because we haven't been allowed to be. As children, when we showcase any strong emotion, any strong behavior, a lot of times that was shut down, right? We weren't allowed to be angry. We weren't allowed to be scared a lot of the times. It was dismissed, it wasn't always validated. And so we come into adulthood and we don't know how to navigate these emotions as adults either. So, again, this shows up a lot in therapy. And the key here is emotions are not good or bad, right? Emotions are not positive or negative. Emotions are neutral. They are neutral. What tends to tip it from one scale to the other is our response to the emotion, right? If we respond in an ineffective way, then of course we will begin to associate that emotion with as positively or negatively. The key though is to get clear on the message, because that's what emotions truly are. They are neutral messages that are trying to get across a need that we have. And so the practice is to learn, how do I receive the message? Because if I can receive the message, then I can meet my need. My emotion will have done its job and it will pass, right? And again, this is practice, right? We can't undo years of not having really strong emotional regulation in a matter of moments, in a matter of days. So, fear is a primal emotion, primal, because regardless of the thought or belief that we're supposed to be happy all the time, that our brain is supposed to make sure we're happy, truly our brain's job is to keep us alive. Our brain is wired for survival. And anytime fear shows up, the brain goes on high alert, right? It thinks we're threatened, we're in danger. Where that emotion shows up is in a place where there is no language, no logic, right? Fear shows up in our body before it really shows up in our thinking, rational mind, right? We get tense, right? Our heartbeat races because this is our body preparing us to face a threat, right? And so many of us are acting just off of that physical response and that no, the fear when it shows up in the limbic part of our brains. And so it shows up, the brain's thinking we're in danger, we're not safe. What do? We avoid it, right? We avoid it. We flight, which is avoid it. We fight, right? We freeze, we fawn, right? We people please, we dissociate. So when we cannot really rationalize or think through the emotion, right? When we just act on it, when we react to it instead of truly respond to it, then this is how we kind of end up in this cycle of fear running the show, right? If we don't take the time to really analyze, okay, what is fear trying to tell me? Is there a true threat here? Am I safe? What do I need to feel safe, right? If we just act without any of that, fear is running the show. So we have to, again, learn to recognize the message that, okay, in this moment, I don't feel safe. In this moment, I feel threatened, and learn how to meet the need there. That's the first step to learning to truly conquering fear. I don't believe in fearlessness, right? I don't think that's a true thing, right? Our brain's doing our job. We can't be fearless. If we didn't have fear, it serves a very important purpose. If we didn't have fear, we'd be out here reckless, right? We'd be dead. We'd be doing things that would compromise our survival. So fear is very important. We just have to learn to respond to it appropriately. And our brain can't tell the difference between, oh, there's a tiger or a bear after me, and oh, I'm scared of public speaking, right? That's not how that part of our brain works. So moving on to failure, again, where we talk about needing a new publicist. I mentioned not too long ago, we associate failure with negativity, right? We associate failure as bad. And early as elementary, right? If you get a certain grade, you failed, right? It's so you don't get the same response, validation, praise, um, sports, all of these things, right? There is failure, and no, there's not any intentional efforts to help a lot of us navigate failure, right? It just is something that doesn't feel good, and it doesn't feel good, so we want to avoid it. And really, we have to change our relationship or our definition of failure. Okay. Failure is inevitable. Alante mentioned that in the introduction. It is inevitable. We spend so much time trying to avoid something that is going to happen in some capacity at some point in your life. So, what I try to help people do is shift the focus from the possibility of failure and instead spend some time and some intention on, again, navigating the possibility, right? Because at the end of the day, we can't guarantee success or failure in a lot of ways. But if I can shift my attention from, oh, I might fail, to how can I cope if I fail? What will my support look like? What will I need to do next? How will I pivot? How will I learn the lesson? How will I apply this to my next step? That's resilience, right? We wear the capes, right? We wear the capes, and it feels like there's no space for failure, especially if you are a woman of color. If you are like me, a first generation grad student, a first generation college student, I was that. We are carrying legacies on our backs. It is a lot of pressure. It doesn't feel like we have space or room to fail, but we really have to learn to embrace our humanity, right? And understand that resilience, grit, it isn't wearing the cape. It isn't being strong all the time, right? True resilience is found in the healing. It's found in being able, like I said, to heal from the challenges, acknowledge the humanity, acknowledge the feelings, and apply that to moving forward. Okay. So let's shift to mindset. Mindset, again, trendy word, but really, in my opinion, the way I use it is very similar to what we call CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. And that model lends itself to the belief that our beliefs and our thoughts really are running the show, right? I don't subscribe to the belief that we can control our thoughts. Because if I say to you, don't think about a gun to your head, what's the first thing you're going to do? Think about a gun to your head, right? So we cannot just really control our thoughts. But and most of our thoughts happen subconsciously without us even really being aware of what's going through our minds. But we'll have a thought, right? If the thought is, oh, I don't want to apply for this school because I might get rejected. Well, then that thought then leads to a feeling of something, let's throw a feeling out there, something you're avoiding may lead to a feeling of inadequacy, right? This thought makes me feel inadequate, leads to inadequacy. And then the behavior then follows that feeling. If I feel inadequate, then my behavior is going to then follow suit, that same line. And then that just reinforces the thought or the core belief that was leading this all together. It's a vicious cycle, right? So we're going to talk about how mindset work really looks in practice, and keeping in mind, again, it is very much a practice that requires consistency. So we're going to start with first noticing your feelings, and since we're talking about fear today, that's what I mentioned. Acknowledge it, name what you are feeling, if it's fear, if it's anything else that you may be dealing with, because this outline can be applied to work on mindset in any area. But since we're talking about navigating the fear of failure, that's how I approached it on this slide. So we want to acknowledge our feelings. And this is something else that has become very obvious. Most of us do not have a broad emotional vocabulary. We know the basics, right? If someone asks you how you're feeling, we say, oh, I'm good. Oh, I'm fine, when those aren't even feelings. So there is something called a feeling wheel. You can Google it, and it offers a breadth of emotions for you to kind of help truly identify what you're feeling outside of sad, outside of happy, outside of scared. And you really want to get into a habit of checking in with how am I feeling, and how is that feeling showing up in my body, because often our emotions register in our bodies before they register in our mind. Then we want to become aware of our thoughts. As I just mentioned, most of our thoughts happen subconsciously, right? We're not aware. We're just, we're in hustle culture. We're grinding all day and we are just moving through life. So it's spending some time becoming aware of your thoughts, noticing, what am I saying to myself? How am I speaking to myself? And lastly, then recognizing how these things are driving your behavior, right? Most of us have a pretty good awareness of behavior, right? We can pretty much acknowledge, oh, I avoid, oh, I procrastinate, oh, I this. So sometimes it's helpful to work backwards, right? If you know that, oh, you tend to be a procrastinator, then maybe it's working backwards. What am I thinking? And then what am I feeling that may be leading to this behavior, right? Reverse engineer it. But once you gain this awareness, the first three steps are really just gaining an awareness, because that's where it starts. We can't really propel forward without being clear on where we need to do the work. So after the awareness, we want to then allow our feelings, because most of us don't do that, right? We push them down. Um, we push them to the side. We just don't want to deal with it. We're busy. We have stuff to do. But as I mentioned before, emotions are messages, right? And if we do not listen to the message, the emotion stays, right? It's going to keep trying to get your attention. Pushing it down does not make the emotion go away. And so some of you may really um, testify to that in just emotions, even from childhood, right? That you push down all this time, but you're still affected to this day. Well, it's because you haven't listened to the message. You haven't given yourself what you need. So that's so important to allow your feelings, recognize that you can feel many different things at once, and try to get clear on, what is this emotion telling me? Limit the judgment, right? We limit I shouldn't feel this way. I don't want to feel this way. I'm bad for feeling this way. Limit the judgment, okay? And look for the message, seek the message. Why is this emotion here? What is it trying to tell me? Then you want to practice reframing your thoughts. If the thought is, I'm not good enough, right? We want to question and challenge that thought. Is this a fact? Is this an assumption? Is this a judgment? Do I have any evidence to support this thought? Right? A lot of times our thoughts are running the show and they're not even true, right? Thoughts are not true. Just because you think it doesn't mean it's a fact. And that is very much an epiphany for a lot of people because again, most of us are accepting every thought like it's a fact and absolute truth. So once you become aware of your thoughts, right, it starts there. Then you want to start challenging them. And even beyond challenging them, you want to reframe them. Because sometimes a thought might be true, right? The thought may be, man, this is hard. Okay, if you challenge that, yes, it may be true. But reframing it allows us to make the thought something more helpful. Okay. Yes, it may be hard, but a more helpful thought may be, but I can do hard things, right? It's just aiming for something compassionate. It's aiming for a more positive self dialogue instead of the negative dialogue that most of us have, those negative loops, right? It's the intentionality there to think something that will encourage you, that will motivate you, because research shows critiquing ourselves doesn't help us, right? Shaming ourselves and when other people shame us, that's not really effective. Research shows that self-compassion is what motivates us. It's what encourages us. So again, reframing the thoughts into something helpful. It doesn't have to be something huge, right? I'm not saying to phase yourself out with something that doesn't feel authentic. It can be something small, right? But definitely something more helpful than the negative loop that we tend to have. And then lastly, we want our behavior to follow, right? Again, if we can allow our feeling, have a more helpful thought, then ideally we have a more helpful behavior as well. Okay, it all aligns. So you want to begin to act with intention instead of your feelings running the show, instead of reacting to everything. You have time to connect the wirings in your brain for you to really put some logic to your emotions and put some logic to your thoughts. And what's also important here, again, consistency, consistency. Mindset work is work, it's lifelong work. Healing is lifelong work. I tell people we never arrive, right? This is our life's work. You have to think every day we go out into this world and we are being pressured. There's so much noise. There's always something or someone telling us you're not good enough. You need to do this. You need to do that, right? So we have to constantly be intentional to drown out that noise, to trust ourselves over this world that would have us listen to it instead, right? That will have us doubt ourselves, right? And it's also important to celebrate every win. It does not matter how small. We celebrate every win. And this is something else that I think we struggle with, right? We women, we're conditioned to be humble, we're conditioned to be small. And I'm not saying you have to blast everything on social media, but pat yourself on the back. Okay. Acknowledge your growth, your healing, your wins, your efforts. That is so important. Okay. So that's the mindset work. Next steps. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I've got a typo there. I don't know what happened to my wording there. Now, when you put this into practice, here are a few things that may help you. And I want to start with mindfulness. And mindfulness is simply the ability to be present without judgment. Okay. How can I ground myself? How can I center myself? Instead of, getting so lost in the future, so lost in the past. How can I be present? And mindfulness, there are a million ways to be mindful. It is beyond the meditation, it is beyond the journaling, right? You can mindfully eat, right? You can notice the texture of the food in your mouth, savor the taste that may be there. It's simply eating without scrolling on your phone. Usually we're eating and doing some other task. Mindfulness can happen in nature. Mindfulness can happen in movement. There are so many ways to be mindful, and it is very much learning what mindfulness looks like for you, what works for you, right? Journaling is very effective, but I don't journal. That's not my thing, and that's okay. It does not have to look a certain way. So mindfulness is a big part of this mindset shift, right? Because that is again how we build and create this awareness that we need in shifting mindset. The next tool is self compassion. So I came across a quote a few weeks ago in an IG story, and the quote read, I thought I needed more self confidence, but what I really needed is more self compassion. And that just resonated with me, gave me goosebumps because it is true, right? We often think we need a lot of validation, which we do need validation, right? But it's not the end all be all. Really, if you can be kind to yourself, if you can show grace for yourself, if you can say that, hey, maybe I didn't have the outcome I wanted, but at least I tried, right? Hey, maybe I can do this differently next time instead of it being, I shouldn't have done this, I shouldn't have done that, right? Self compassion is just being kind to yourself. And when people struggle with this, I give the example of, or the offering of, what would you tell a friend who was experiencing the same exact thing? If your friend comes in and says, oh my gosh, I bombed this paper I wrote, you're not going to be like, oh my gosh, that was so stupid. You should have been prepared, right? We're not going to say to a good friend the things that we're probably saying to ourselves. We're going to show a lot more empathy. We're going to show a lot more compassion. And that's what we need to practice with ourselves as well. And so, another option is to think about what you tell your 4-year-old self, right? If your 4-year-old self had a bad day, had a hard day, how would you how did you want to be spoken to? What did you need to hear at those times? What type of encouragement, what type of comfort were you seeking? And now, as an adult, go back and give that to yourself. Our inner child still resides in all of us. And we as adults now can give ourselves what maybe we were lacking as children. So that's all a part of self compassion. And lastly, community. There's a Brene Brown quote: you do not have to do it alone because we were never meant to. And that, again, is so true. We are biologically wired for connection. Humans have evolved and survived because we moved in groups, we moved in packs. Again, it is part of our evolution. However, right now, our society is very much promoting this individualism, right? And we are more lonely than ever. We feel more alone than ever, even though we're connected on all the social media, all of these things. Research shows we feel more lonely than ever. We've lost this sense of community. And so you have to, in grad school, in anything, in any facet season of life, you have to have a support system. And quality over quantity here, right? We're not saying you have to have all the a huge friend group like you had in high school, but however many quality friends who can truly show up for you, a therapist, okay, key even in this journey through grad school, because again, this is a huge undertaking. Graduate school is very much a courageous, hard, difficult, beautiful journey, but we shouldn't have to do it alone. So finding your community is key in navigating this and navigating the inevitable failures, setbacks, all of it, having someone to come in and show up for you in those times. And even before those times, right? Therapy, a lot of times people show up here when things are bad, when things have just seemed like there are no other options, right? Things have hit rock bottom. But therapy doesn't you don't have to wait to get help and when it's hard. It's okay to be proactive. We're proactive about a lot of other things, right? Think about our physical health, right? We go get our wellness visits every year. We have all these screenings to be proactive. Therapy can be utilized very much in the same way. All right. So, in wrapping up, I just put this out there because, again, so much of what people, when they struggle with fear or struggle with the fear of failure, they feel like they're lacking confidence. And so, I have an offering on my website. It's a quiz to help people identify what their confidence blocks may be. And you'll notice the options pretty much align with a lot of what I was talking about today, right? The first being acceptance. And acceptance doesn't mean approval. Acceptance doesn't mean we don't make efforts to change. Acceptance helps us focus on what we have control over versus what we don't have control over. Beliefs. Again, this is the mindset work, right? Learning to understand or identify what our core beliefs are and how they are inhibiting our growth. And then lastly, consistency, being able to take action to make the changes in our life we want to see. So I just wanted to put that offering out there. It's a free quiz. It comes with free resources, no pitches there, but it's available for you if you feel like it's something that would be helpful for you. So this is my contact information, my website. I am Feel with Lee on Instagram, Facebook, and I'm setting up Pinterest. IG is where I am most active. I've got my email address. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, any follow up, anything I can do for you. And I want to open the floor for your questions and see how I can help you in any of the things that I may have mentioned.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Lee, that was amazing, y'all. Raise your hand. We're going to raise the roof. Raise your hand for Lee to let her know that you just loved this session. This was amazing. Oh my, I'm just over here like, this is what we needed, I think. And it was just a perfect session to really culminate the virtual piece of our summit, because I think this is just the reality, and it's okay, and we're going to have a lot of emotions through this process. And so I just think this is so important. I'm trying to get the video right, y'all. Sorry. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Thought this was a great session as well. A lot of people just saying thank you, and this was amazing. But one person asked, do you have any tips on building a support system? And I was actually reading some of the responses from the registration of things people wanted to be discussed during the summit today. And they really want to know, like, how do you build that support system, especially when maybe you're the first in your family to go through this experience or the first in your friend group. So how do we build a support system, or any tips you have for building a support system when we kind of feel like we're the first ones in our circle?
Yes, well, I think there are different ways to go about it. So if you are in graduate school, I would see if there's any connection with people in your program. I think it's very important to try to make connections with people in your journey, in your program, in your courses. Outside of that, there are Facebook groups for everything. Okay, let's be clear. There are Facebook groups to identify types of snakes, right? So I think part of building a community is really showing up as your authentic self, truly being who you are, so that you are able to connect to your people, find your tribe. So, whatever some of your true passions or likes may be, finding where are those people? Where might they show up? And also understanding that there may be some overcoming fear in building community as well, right? A lot of us struggle with being vulnerable in making the first step or trying to create friendships. And I know I can speak to this personally, right? Because this was an area I had to create some intentionality in. But understanding, I reframe vulnerability as courage, right? When we're being vulnerable, we're being brave, and building community requires you to really hone in on that braveness that is in you, the bravery that is really there. And like I said, showing up as yourself and finding where your people may be, people with common likes. Meetup.com. I have quite a few clients who are on Bumble for friends. There's a Bumble BFF. I have quite a few clients who have connected with people there. So you have to, I'll be honest, you have to get creative, right? You have to get creative, but know it's out there.
Yeah, I love that. And shout out to Bumble. Shout out to Bumble. Um, another person asks, how do you recommend navigating finding who I am, right? And dealing with perfectionism with their faith?
Okay. That's another one that I see often in therapy. I think we are very much in a generation where we are trying to reconcile our faith, right, and what we've been taught and what we've been taught in church and things of that nature. And that's a very sensitive thing. I'll be honest, it looks different for everyone, but I am a big proponent of values work. I don't mean to go off on a tangent, but our values, everyone has heard the saying, show up as your best self, right? We hear that all the time. Be your highest self, be your best self. Your highest and best self is when you show up in your values. Your values are the things that make you feel like you, right? That make you feel, think of a time when you really felt your best. You were showing up in your values then. And so finding your values, you can Google values list, right? But let me give you an example. One of my values is ease. That's one of my values, right? Let's work smarter, not harder. Let me get out of grind culture. Let me get out of hustle culture. Like, sometimes finding our values starts with, why do I feel out of alignment? What is wrong? And knowing, okay, that's opposite of how I want to feel. So what is the opposite of that to show up in my value, right? What is my value there if I want the opposite? So when you can really get clear on your values, and you want to get clear on your core values, your highest values, no more than 2 or 3, and you can show up there, that's your authenticity. That's your truth. That when you can really say, this is what I want most out of life. This is me at my best. So again, Google a values list or email me. I have a really good activity that helps people identify them. Lee@leelester.com. And yeah, I think that is truly part of what gets us to our authenticity.
Love that. Love that. Someone else says, this was amazing and thank you. Any tips on not handling other people's constructive or non-constructive criticism better? So any thoughts on how we can maybe manage that when it shows up?
Yes. So criticism, definitely. Again, I want to go back to, what are you thinking when you hear that criticism, right?
Mm,
Realize what thoughts are going through your head, reframe it into something more helpful. If someone is criticizing you and you think, oh my gosh, I'll never understand, I'll never get it right. Notice that thought and say, but maybe next time I can try blank. right? That's a reframe to a more helpful thought. Again, it is not, I don't want to fool or lie to anyone like this is quick and easy and you're going to do it one time and you've got it. That's not
Mhm.
how it works. It is practice, 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 practice. So might always go back to reframe it into something more true and more helpful, that rather than sitting or getting stuck in the negative loop.
Yes, yes. Oh, I totally agree. Someone else asks, is it possible to be in a romantic relationship and still be in the process? They're processing their own emotions, right? Since healing can feel like it's never done, but they're saying, and they're actually asking, is healing ever done? So it's like, how does one do both, in tandem? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I do. So I am of the belief that healing is never done. That's my belief, though. Someone may believe different, but no, I truly believe it's never done. Ideally, you are with someone who is also committed to the work of healing. That's ideal. Can it be done? Absolutely. I'm married, right? And I've been married for quite a while. We married young, but it's important to be with someone who can also be committed to their own journey and accept that in this journey there is growth, right? There is change, and to be open to that, to welcome that, and not expect you to just remain the same, if that makes sense. It change is uncomfortable for people, right? Because again, our brain perceives change as threat, right? What's familiar is what's safe. So sometimes it's, yeah, just work having those conversations and that talk with someone who is going to try to do the same for themselves.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
totally possible because I'm doing it.
Thank you for giving us an example. I appreciate that. Someone else asks, any tips on how, oh, and actually while we're doing this, do you mind just going back one slide so people can see your contact information?
Sure.
There we go. 'Cause that was the next question. How do you deal with over ambition, right?
Mm,
I feel like someone's in my head. That's fine.
all
How you
right.
deal with over ambition? It brings, sometimes you can waste effort and time without a lot of success quite often because maybe you're just trying to do too many things at the same time.
So my question is, have you ever thought about why are you overly ambitious? Are you trying to prove something? If you are trying to prove something, who are you trying to prove it to? To yourself, to other people? Are you trying to please someone? Are you performing? Like why? And this again sometimes takes some time to really get to the why. What is driving the over ambitiousness? And when you get clear on your why, I think that forms your next step, right? It is okay to be multi passionate. I don't think there's anything wrong. I'm multi passionate, right? But you, I believe everyone is their own best expert, right? I don't know you better than you know yourself. So
Mhm.
you in that moment can speak to, is this detrimental to me? Or if it is, how can I focus on what's most important in this moment and save the next thing for when I have more capacity, right? Because I'm also of the belief just because you have the ability doesn't mean you have the capacity. Two very different things, right?
Yeah.
But get to your why. What's driving over ambitious? Who am I trying to prove something to? Why do I feel the need to prove myself? And again, just from speaking from therapy, a lot of that usually stems from childhood, right? So there may be something to unpack there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I know this. Like, I try to, these sessions are meant for you, your expertise. But as you were talking today, I just was like, the work I've done is like something's like, oh yeah, I remember when I got to that point. That point of like, what's the motivation or the intention behind the activity? And for this person who's listening, maybe you'll learn, maybe as you continue doing work, the motivation behind it changes, right? I think when I started my PhD program, I was very much so wanting to prove that I was worthy and prove I'm smart and da 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 from other things, where now, I'm very passionate about this work and that is what motivates it, right? And so I think I do think that even your intention and the thing behind what you're working on can change as you do the work. And thank you for encouraging us to be consistent with that work. It is, who it's not easy, and I'm sick of it being romanticized. So I love the speakers this week keeping it real. It's ugly work, but it's absolutely worthwhile.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, y'all, I don't think I see any more questions in here. We have about 8 minutes till the IG live. You know what? We're gonna take those 8 minutes because we usually run until the last three. But Lee, thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. I mean, there's plenty tweets. I think we're all just encouraged and know that we can get through the moments of failure and figuring these things out. And just thank you so much. I feel good. So I hope that you all attending feel good.
All right. Thank you so much. And I'm sending so much love and encouragement out to everyone here. I'm rooting for you. We got this.
Yes, yes, yes. All right, y'all. See you in a few. And there's lots of thank yous in here too. Thanks, Lee.
Bye.